Okay, I want to talk about transformations, more specifically isometric. Isometric means that your pre-image where you start and your image where you finish are exactly the same. Okay, so there's three types of isometric transformations. The first one is shown here. It's called a translation. A translation is when you slide, okay? It's when you slide a figure in either a horizontal and or as well a vertical direction. Okay, so let me show you what I mean. Tracing paper is a really good way to help understand which type of transformation you're looking at. So if you trace the initial figure, and I have not really indicated in any way on these which one is initial. So we'll always start here at the bottom left. Okay, so if I start with this one, to get from this image to this image, if it's a translation, I slide it. Okay, and I said you could describe it as a horizontal and vertical shift. So it's a horizontal to the right and vertical up shift. So if I can take my paper and slide my tracing paper, trace my figure and slide it to the next figure, then I know what I'm looking at is a translation. Okay, my next example here is a reflection. I had to take a look at it to figure out. It's a reflection. So a reflection is when you flip a figure and you do it over a line. Okay, so kind of like when you're looking in a mirror. Okay, everything is backwards, right? So you know when something's a reflection if when you trace your pre-image, if you draw a line, actually I'm going to have to slide this up so you can see the whole thing. So I'm going to trace it again. So here's my pre-image where I start. To get to my image, I have to flip it over a line. So if it is a reflection, the line will be equidistant between them, and the shape will be perpendicular when you flip it over that line. Think of it as being at a 90-degree angle. Here's what I mean. So let's say my line is somewhere like there, my line of reflection. Well, if I flip it over that line and it lands on the other one, it's a reflection. So let me show you one more time. I'm just going to sketch about what I think the line of reflection would be. So one way I do this sometimes, make a little mark each side of the line. Make a little mark so I can line them up. This might not be exact. I've done this all just freehand. Okay, so if I flip it over this line, so when I flip it, I'm going to line back up the line of reflection and those two little marks I made. And it's landing on the other shape. So I know I'm looking at a reflection. Reflection is a flip. Alright, my last example here is a rotation. A rotation is when you turn a figure, to turn, and you turn it about a point. So I'm going to estimate about where I think this point of reflection is, and this is just from a lot of practice. I'm thinking about here. Let's see how close we are. So when I trace my pre-image this time, if it's a rotation, I'm going to turn my paper to get to the next part of this, to my final image here. So I'm going to hold on this point and turn. Oh, I was a little off. Let's try it again. So I think it's going to be actually a little bit lower. Maybe here. Pretty close. Getting closer. Okay, point of rotation is, they're probably the hardest ones to do actually. I'm going to try right there this time. But I can tell I'm getting real close, right? Yeah. one last time. If I'm not dead on, I'm going to just estimate. Oh, that's pretty close. Okay, so I had to turn to get it from the pre-image to the image. Alright, if I start here, I'm going to turn it and land on this one. Ah, I can't find it. Try one last time. Oh, pretty close that time. Okay, so a rotation is if you take a pre-image and you turn it and it lands on the final image. So somewhere around here. Okay, so you turn it about a point. Okay, so now we're going to just look at some examples and decide whether they are a translation or a slide, a reflection or a flip, or a rotation, which is a turn. So let's look at 3 examples. If I am asked, let's leave this up so I can still see the definitions. If I am asked to name the transformation that's given, again, tracing paper might help with this. I'm looking at this first one, number 1, and I'm thinking this looks very much like a reflection. Okay, let's actually just go through them first, though. Let me show you why it's not the other ones. Okay, first of all, if it was a translation, I would be able to slide from the pre-image to the image. There's no way. It's backwards, so that's not going to be a translation. If it is a reflection, I would be flipping. And in this case, with tracing paper, you have to actually turn your paper over to make it match. And that is what this is. It's a reflection. Again, the line of reflection is going to be equidistant between them. So if I draw a little line there, and again, if I put a little mark, I didn't do it initially, there it is. I can line it up better when I flip it. So when I flip it, I want to line up the line and that little mark. And it's pretty close to dead on. Okay, so this is definitely a reflection. Okay, let's look at number 2, the smiley faces. Again, I have no promises that this is perfect. Oh, by the way, on this one, if you think it's a rotation, try and turn it. So hold your paper with a pencil point, turn it. It's not going to match up. So it was not a rotation. Sometimes you're going to have more than one possible answer. And these particular ones that I made, I wanted there to only be one answer. But it's always possible that you have more than one. Okay, let's try number 2. So I'm going to trace my smiley face. Now again, if this is a translation, I should be able to slide it from here to here. And everything matches up. So I think I found it already. It's going to be a translation. Okay, so I'm going to write that down here, and then let's look at the other ones and make sure we like translation. Okay, could it be a reflection? A lot of people think this is a reflection. Remember, if it's a reflection, it's got to be kind of perpendicular to that. So a line that's equidistant between them, and when we're looking kind of at the center of it, we want it to be kind of perpendicular. Okay, so if I trace this, make a little mark on my line. I'm going to trace the line that I think would be about halfway between them. Trace a little mark. Okay, if I flip this over, so a reflection would be a flip. When I turn this over, the smiley face, the circle part matches, but look, the smiley face is sideways. This is not a reflection. Okay? If it was a rotation, so a lot of people might say, again, this looks like a rotation, hold it with the point of a pencil and turn your paper. I can get the circle to land on the circle, but the smiley face part is upside down. So it is not a rotation. So the only thing that this is a translation. The only way I could get from the pre-image to the image is by sliding it to the right and up. And then I get a perfect match. Well, as perfect as I can be for freehand. Okay, let's look at the last one. So my pre-image, I'm going to trace. If it is a slide, I'm not turning or flipping my paper. So if I slide down here, it is not matching. Okay, so this is not a translation, not a translation. If it was a reflection, I would be able to flip it. Okay, so it would be about halfway. And we'll make a little mark right there. So we can line it back up. Okay, when I flip it over, I line back up my line. And it's not even close. I see the flat part and the point, they're not matching up. So I don't think it's a reflection. Now, let me erase this because I don't want it to be confusing. I'm going to erase my line there. But I am going to leave that point because if this is a rotation, I'm thinking like right here. Let's see how close we can get. So if it's a rotation, I'm going to be turning about a point. So let's give this a little turn. And that's pretty close to perfect. Okay, it might have been a little bit higher than that, but it's pretty close. So when I turned this figure about this point, it landed on itself. Okay, so this one was the turn, the rotation. Okay, so reflection is this one. Reflection is your flip. Okay, we had to take our paper and turn it to make it land. A translation was a slide. We had to take our smiley face and slide it. A rotation was a turn. You turn it about a point, so you have to find a point. That's a little tough to do. With some practice, you'll get pretty close to right on. Rotation was the turn.